Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we're going to be reviewing the film Knock at the Cabin. Okay, Sarah, you're going to kick us off with an IMDb summary for Knock at the Cabin.
Sure. While vacationing, a girl and her parents are taken hostage by armed strangers who demand that the family make a choice to avert the apocalypse.
The premise of like bad things happening when you're out camping at a remote cabin is so done, so overdone.
Yes.
But they put a little twist with the apocalypse there, so
They sure do.
here we go.
Raising those stakes.
Yeah. It's no longer your life that you're trying to protect. It's apparently the billions of humans on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck.
The entire world. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
No big deal.
Okay, so let's start off with our one-sentence summaries for Knock at the Cabin. What was yours?
Mine is just say no to remote cabin vacations.
Yeah, such a good follow-up to our last little bit there.
See? Just perfect. You segued in just perfectly. And you didn't even know what mine was.
Mm-hmm. Especially when there's like a long, winding road to get to it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You're far from the main road. Like,
yes.
Once you see that, you just go, nope, we're going to go back home.
No cell signal?
Yeah. Heck no. I need cell service at all time. I know what happens.
My summary is dinner knives for the win.
Yes.
They came in handy.
They sure did.
Gotta have some good dinner knives. Okay, let's start off with our initial thoughts of Knock at the Cabin, and then we'll enter spoiler territory. So let's dive in. Sarah, what did you think about M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin?
I enjoyed it. It's not going to be like on my top 10 at the end of the year, but I had a good time while watching it. I think that the premise was super interesting. I think some of the performances were really good. We can talk about in spoilers some of the ways that I think that this movie differentiates itself from other Shyamalan movies. But yeah, I had a good time with it. It's not like the greatest thing in the world, but it was entertaining and engaging for me to watch.
Entertaining enough for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, there's some big personalities, some fun actors that have a lot of great charisma. I'm surprised you enjoyed it so much, so that's gonna be fun. I'm excited to unpack that a little bit more. Yeah, I didn't really love this movie. I think I just expected more from it. I think that's the problem. In all aspects, I thought that the writing was going to be a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more thrilling. We've seen M. Night Shyamalan do some really interesting stuff, and this one felt a little bit literal and safe, which I was surprised by, especially as the ending was unfolding. I was like, oh, okay, no, this is actually what we're doing here. Okay. And then there's some bits around the characters and what they represent that I thought was just like shoehorned in there a little bit, that was like really inelegantly done. And then I also thought that from an action perspective and all that front, this subverts a lot of the expectations that I think we generally have around this kind of premise, which is kind of fun. But I think it makes for a little bit less exciting and thrilling experience. So I think I definitely thought this was going to be something different. And I think this plays it a lot more safe and a little bit more clunky than I'd expected it to. So it's kind of vague, but those are kind of my high level thoughts about this without spoiling too much.
I think that makes sense. And I also wonder like how expectations play into this, because I thought that this was not going to be a good movie because it had gotten like bad reviews, and I I knew that it had like low scores on IMDb. Like, I did not expect much from this. And so I wonder if because my expectations were low and I was expecting not a great movie, I was able to maybe appreciate it. Whereas if I had gone in wanting, like, expecting something really good, I might have been a little bit more disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that plays a factor. I think the marketing of this also sets you up to expect something that this movie really isn't at all. Um,
Mm,
and
mhm.
I think the challenge is that I had with it is that I love that it's not the classic, like, typical horror, gory movie experience that, the title and the premise kind of set you up for. But what it subverts and chooses to do wasn't interesting enough. Like, it wasn't elegantly done in how it's subverting those expectations. So it just feels a little bit flat and a little bit one dimensional. Like, what we're seeing is really what we're getting. And uh, because because M Night Shyamalan is such a dynamic storyteller, we've seen him done such interesting stories and premises. I was like, oh, I expected I expected a little bit more from you.
Very interesting. I think we're not going to be able to talk about some of
I know,
these things
dancing
unless
around
we
this.
get into spoilers.
Yes. Okay, let's dive into spoilers. So if you haven't seen Knock at the Cabin yet, we recommend checking it out. And I think it's available on Peacock now. So check it out and then continue to listen. Okay, now that we can be less vague, let's dive in fully.
Yes. Yeah. Tell me more about what didn't work for you in this one.
Yes. So there's there's this really interesting question for me that was posed for the bulk of the movie, which is, and I think the movie kind of gets at this with the back and forth between Daddy Andrew and the four horsemen, which is, are they telling the truth or are they absolutely insane, right? And ultimately, will this family have to make a choice? I'm curious if that was top of mind for you at all for most of the movie, or if you were like, no, we're just on this ride, like they're gonna have to make a choice. But the fact that everything unfolds the way that it's set up to unfold at the beginning, I just thought was a little bit less exciting. Like, from the beginning, th- it would have been more interesting to continue to play that dance back and forth on, is it really real, is it really happening, or is it not? And there's so much conversation about it that I would have expected there to be a little bit more of an interesting ending versus just, we told you you're gonna have to make a choice, we are telling the truth, now one of you needs to die, and they kind of just go with it, like, okay, let's kill one of us off. I was like, man, I thought we would have done something a little bit more interesting here than just, let's follow the directions and kill one of our family members, because apparently this is really real.
Yeah, so because it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, I was ready for the twist. I was
Mhm.
ready for there to be
Mhm.
something else. And so the whole time I was going like I was set up because I know
Yep.
what he's famous for there to be something else that happens. So I don't know, like I tricked my own self in this movie. Like, the twist is that there was no twist. And I really didn't mind that because throughout the movie, in those conversations, they're planting these doubts. When they first show up, it's like, no, you guys are crazy, you're psychos, like they need to get out. Even, you know, uh Andrew uh doesn't believe it and is like, no, they're just timing this because this was already pre-recorded, like all of that. And as the movie goes on and on and on, there were these doubts forming in my mind. So I was like, okay, I'm ready for the twist, and then the twist never came. So I think that it worked for me. I wasn't mad that at how it ended. I have so many questions about how you go on with your life after having to make that choice. But this movie is not about that. Um, but I went on I went on that roller coaster that the movie wanted to take me on of this isn't real, these guys are crazy, how do you get out? And then like over time going like, oh crap, is this real? This can't be real. This is very silly. I'm waiting for the twist, and then the twist never comes. So it had me interested enough to go on that journey.
Mhm. And it was a journey indeed, and I think you bring up a good point, which is the twist is that there is no twist. But I was upset.
That's totally fair. Yeah,
I feel
I get it.
punked. I was excited for a thing. You are M. Night Shyamalan. You know what we're coming here for, and to just, like, give us nothing. I'm like, "Oh, man. I went on a ride with you, and now I'm disappointed." Well, the other
I
thing
love it.
is, okay, if there is no twist and they are really telling the truth and the world is ending, I I also just wanted there to be a different set of actions that the characters choose to take. Like a little
Mm,
bit more of like oh my gosh, this is really happening. We are going to have to give up one of us. Like that whole I mean, that's an impossible decision. Like kind of milk that a little bit more, you know? But it was almost like Eric was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna I have peace now, just do it." And Andrew's like, "Okay, I'm just gonna do it." And the willingness that the characters had, of course, they're like very traumatized at this point, and they believe that they're saving the world. But I just think that was maybe a little bit rushed for me as well. Like, let's milk that. Wow, it is real. The twist is that there is no twist. And this family that we're invested in at this point has to make this impossible decision. Like, lean into that a little bit more because that in and of itself is kind of exciting as well. And that tension of like, I love my family. I want to preserve this. We're going to walk the earth for the rest of eternity together, but it'll be painful, but we're together versus we have to give up one of us and make that choice to save humanity. Like that tension's really interesting too. That I think we didn't. I would have wanted more time in that as well. But the characters were like, "All right, here we go. Let's do the thing," which felt a little bit rushed and a little bit thin.
mm, gotcha. Yeah. So maybe instead of like you have like a few minutes, Dave Bautista's character says that, so maybe it needed to be
Yes,
like you need
let's
to
milk
like
the minutes.
make a choice by a certain time to like
Mhm.
give them more time to like sit with it.
Yeah, to like freak out and to be like, "Oh my gosh, what are we gonna do?" Like all of that, like lean into that a little bit more, and then the time's ticking, and you see the clouds coming. I think that would have made it more thrilling, more
Mm.
satisfying as well. I just need Jonathan Goff to not be such a fabulous human and just be so willing to just give his sweet little life over. You know, he was so at peace with it by that point. I was like, "Wow, you are really an angel, Jonathan Goff. Wow."
Yeah, but I don't know. I got how he got there. Like it didn't feel too rushed for me, honestly. So like what I thought was going to happen is that uh the I basically thought that the two were going to be fighting over the gun and somehow Wen was going to die. That is where I thought this movie would
I would
go.
have loved that.
That is apparently where the book goes that this is
I
based off
love
of.
that.
So that was what I was waiting for in that scene. And then
Mm,
obviously that didn't happen. But I understood why Eric was making that choice. And so that it didn't feel like he came to that decision lightly because you saw the wheels in his mind
the whole
turning
time. Yeah.
throughout. And
Mhm.
so I don't know, to me that worked. I think when dying would have been a maybe a better route to go, but I
Yes.
understand why we got to the point that we got with this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I would have loved that ending a little bit more. They're just, you know what it is? I think I was frustrated at how willing they were to go along with this non-twist ending that I didn't
Gotcha.
want. I'm
Gotcha.
like, no, I need the characters to rebel against this with
I
me.
see. Okay. Yes. So we
Yes.
needed a collective revolt against the
Yes.
movie. Got it. I'm down.
But I like your proposed ending a lot more, and it sounds like the novel did that direction as well, because there is so much weight to that, and it fulfills this non-twist scenario that is now known to be true, but in a way that takes away a lot of the emotional, like, I just feel like in such a situation, it's hard to imagine human beings being this willing to go along with it. I don't know. I guess if we
Yeah.
really believed that the world was ending, maybe.
And so that was something that I was thinking about the whole time is like under what circumstances if I were in their shoes, like when would I believe this? Like I think for me, the calculus of like you're going to save humanity if you sacrifice yourself, like that seems
Yeah.
like a decent proposal to me, but I would need to be certain that it would work in order for me to agree to it. And so I think that was also in the back of my mind is like how much evidence would I need to go along with this? And that's just an interesting thing to think about, and I think I enjoyed that thought exercise and watching these characters have to walk through this absolutely bonkers premise was just interesting to me.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. And I actually think that the bigger issue for me is actually less that Eric's willing to sacrifice himself, but more that Andrew was willing to
Yeah.
be the one in his hands to follow through with that sacrifice with the person he loves most. Like, I think that is the far more difficult decision to make, and emotionally to have to reckon with the fact that you did that, to even be able to execute on that knowing the stakes, but to take the life of the person you love, like that in and of itself, I think needed more wrestling with, because it's oh, and I wish that the movie went down the path of having to figure out for Andrew how he gets to the point where he is ready to do that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. That
It's
is
impossible.
yeah.
Which is why then they could have had that, like, no, I will sacrifice myself. No, I couldn't do this to you.
Mhm.
I will sacrifice myself. And then Wen being the one that is ultimately by accident the one that
Yeah.
gets sacrificed. Because then neither of those characters will need to ever realistically come to terms with the fact that they're going to be the one to have to take the life of the person they love.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that's a like how do you come back from that? Like that
Oh
is
my
such a
gosh, I
tragic
know.
ending.
It really
um
is.
yeah. I that is so like obviously after the sacrifice is made, uh and they're walking to the car, driving in the car, all of that. I'm like, how do you live with this? Like how are you this level of okay after everything that just
I know.
happened? Maybe he was just in absolute shock because that would make sense. But I was wondering about everything afterwards. Like, how do you
Mm.
live with this? How do you explain to your friends and family what happened? How do you, because you're like, your DNA is at the cabin, your stuff is at the cabin, your car is at the cabin. Like, how do you explain all of these dead bodies at the cabin that you were clearly at, that you rented? Like, I have so many questions. And that's not the point of this movie. But it was also interesting to think about that after the movie was over.
Well, as they were driving away in their truck in that final scene, I just heard your voice in my head screeching, like, all of these people are going to need therapy. So much therapy.
So much therapy. Like,
Andrew and Wen need some major healing
oh my gosh.
for that little girl.
Oh
Oh
my
my goodness.
gosh. Can you imagine? I
No, I can't.
'Cause, like so, like, Eric is giving his, like, vision of the future,
I
and the whole time I'm just like, "That is absolutely
know.
impossible based on everything she has seen and experienced today."
Every time there was a close-up shot of her just covering her ears and closing her
Oh,
little eyes as they're about to freaking, like, whack someone, right? Like, 5 feet away from her. I'm like, "Oh, no
oh,
child
this poor little
should
girl.
ever experience this."
Oh, felt so bad
Okay,
for
well,
her.
one of the other things that I had a problem with, but I'm curious if you felt any differently, was the whole, like, the songs playing in the truck thing. The
Oh,
end. I just found that a
yeah.
little bit cheesy. Usually, I love the cheesy. I'm down for it. I'm here for it. It can tug on my heartstrings, but that didn't work for me, and I think it's also because of what you just mentioned. There's so much that these people just went through. This is not just let's remember the death of someone that we love, and honor them. This is like we just went through such a twisted situation that I don't know, it didn't feel like the right emotional beat for me. It landed a little wonky.
Yeah, it's too soon.
Too
Like,
soon.
he died, like, 30 minutes ago.
Yes.
Maybe longer, I don't know. We don't know how long it took them to walk to the truck, but, like,
Yeah.
he died very recently. I don't think that you would be emotionally ready for that.
No,
I don't know.
I
I
agree.
like the concept. I like the idea, but it's too soon.
It's far too soon. I needed them to like sit in silence and drive off in silence.
Yes. I think that would have been better.
It would be more satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, in general, the whole gimmick around the song that we heard played earlier, and let's play it again. It's a little cheesy. It's a little cheesy. It was surprising to me that Homeboy's using that in this one. In a moment that really doesn't work for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I don't it didn't feel like the right emotion to
Mm-mm.
end on
No,
to me.
no.
Like, because I feel like the ending, like them just driving off in silence, you still get the sobriety and the sadness of the situation, but there's also this inherent hopefulness because of what we saw at the diner, and we see that they are together. And so you didn't need that extra fluff in there because it just doesn't land quite right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's that really great shot of the truck driving off and the sky is lightning and there's these like billows of smoke, but the sky is lightning, and that is that bit of hope too. That kind of honestly was helpful for me to put everything into context. Like, okay, they've made these choices, which I don't believe that human beings could possibly make, especially Andrew. But they've made this choice
Mhm.
because they've perhaps seen the larger picture, and that has given some sort of comfort or um, it will help them process what they have just experienced, knowing this larger purpose that they were serving. So I thought that worked really well, that final shot with the sky lightning, the truck driving off into the horizon.
Yes. To live a very traumatized and
Yes.
tortured life.
Yes,
And they
indeed.
lived traumatically ever
Ever
after.
after.
Yes.
Oh, man. Okay, what else really stood out to you or worked for you?
Can we talk about Dave Bautista and his
Yes.
oh my gosh, he was so good in this.
He's having a grand old time.
He sure is. And I just loved this gentle giant situation. And
Mhm.
I mean, to find someone who can pull off everything that he did in this, because he needed to be, so gentle and so kind, but also be able to be imposing and threatening but nice at the same time. I was amazed at how well he did and how well uh, he worked in that role. He was just he stole the show for me in a lot of moments. I was just focused on him.
I think what's really great about his presence in this is one of the interesting things that this movie does is subverting that idea of like there are these menacing people and strangers that come and tie you up and are going to kill you, right? It subverts all of that, and so his gentleness every time feels like such a surprise, because we're kind of waiting for the tenacity to come from him, and it never does. And you truly believe by the end because he's such a large human. If he wanted to hurt you, he really would have by this point. And the fact that he hasn't and is still like so surprisingly patient and soft with them and willing to just let them process and take the time you need, but time is ticking, y'all. um which is like very endearing and kind of comical the entire time. So that worked really well, and he's cast perfectly because you can see how much he could unleash if he wanted to, and he's just, it's all restraint. He's not doing it because he's come with like pure intentions.
Just a gentle giant
Hmm.
ushering in the apocalypse.
And so matter of fact as well,
Oh,
you know
yes. It was great. It's like, okay,
this
this
is really
is
happening.
yep,
Yes, you have
this is
limited
it.
time. Do we need to have another person die? Oh, you're not ready yet. Okay, well, here you are. Here's
We're just
another
gonna hack
body.
him to bits, it's
Yes.
fine.
He's so calm and such a foil to the other three characters as well, that are all incredibly colorful personalities. But have this kind of like freneticness in each of them in a different way. And Dave Bautista's character, Leonard is just like so at peace for so much of this movie.
Also, the fact that his name is Leonard
Yes.
is also just perfect.
Leonard Bronct. Yep. Ron Weasley, a deranged Ron Weasley, makes an appearance.
Yes. Yes, he does.
Yeah,
Just
there's let's talk about the other three characters. Any thoughts on them, the roles that they play?
I so I thought that it was really smart that they brought a nurse and a cook along with them. That was really smart. Just in case somebody did get injured, you need a nurse there to take care of them. And then it might take a little while, so you got to be able to cook up some food for people. But I really loved how Sabrina was so she seemed crazy, but she was also so kind and compassionate at the same time.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I struggled with her character a little bit because I was like, wow, you seem like such like a nice person, a really good person, but you're also doing this thing that is absolutely bonkers. And I don't know what to do with that. Like she was a character that I struggled with. I didn't struggle with Adrian. I thought she was crazy. So I was like, that's fine. You can go away. But
She's just
Sabrina,
along for the ride. Yeah.
yeah, Sabrina really I don't know. I was curious about her character for sure.
Well, you bring up an interesting thought that I didn't have until you're just sharing and kind of following up from our previous topic, which is Eric's the one that spends the most time with Sabrina, and was on the receiving end of a lot of her care and gentleness, and they have a lot of like soft conversations together that where they really are sharing their hearts in a lot of ways, or at least Sabrina sharing her heart with him. And I wonder if that helps accelerate his um willingness to begin to believe that this might be true, and in a way, because we see how much Andrew is just, he's got his walls up, he's got his blindfolds on, like he is not willing to receive or even consider the idea that they could be pure intentioned. And it is fascinating to me that through some of those moments of nurturing, like I wonder if Eric has the thought of like, how could how could this be true that someone like this would come and be this way with me, um, if perhaps they really do believe it, perhaps it is really true, like I wonder how that accelerates his willingness to possibly toy with the idea that this could be true.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's part of it. I think this movie is also um, kind of exploring ideas about faith, obviously, but then about how like the ecosystems that we're in and the people that we're around kind of like influence that faith. So there's a moment in a flashback scene where Andrew tells Eric like, "Hey, if you want to pray, like I'm not going to judge you or whatever." And so we know that Eric has this some sort of faith, some sort of belief system that maybe makes it easier for him to believe that this could actually be happening, whereas Andrew doesn't seem to like believe in a higher power or anything like that, so he is less willing to go along with this. And I think that that's kind of an interesting thing that the movie is exploring. And then we also see that uh, with with the four horsemen, when they're talking, and we learn that there's a message board as well, so they were having these visions, starting this belief system, but they were also using a message board to communicate. And we don't know how
Mm.
that influenced their faith, influenced what they believe. So I think it's this interesting mix that we also see in the world where, you know, sometimes when you have these base beliefs, it makes it easier to believe in other things. Like we see a lot of like in Christianity, people will jump to conspiracy theories because they already have this underlying level of belief, so it's easier to believe in these other things. And I think the movie is trying to explore that theme maybe subtly through some of these characters.
I love that you're teasing these things apart. Yes, that's so true. That didn't really dawn on me while watching the movie. But and you can see, for example, the skepticism and kind of the cynicism that Andrew has in a lot of the claims he makes against the four horsemen, where he's like, you guys just met each other on the internet and like confirmed each other's weird belief systems. Like there's this idea that perhaps their zeal for this has been fanned by the sense of community that they feel on the internet, but also on the flip side, it is a blocker to his willingness to even entertain or consider the possibility that it could be true. He's just so not willing to go there in his headspace at all.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Hmm.
Well, and I would imagine that so much of the passion that these four people have are also confirmed and validated by the other visions, right? Like they were talking about, like, oh my gosh, like we saw the same things. We were wearing the same colors that we saw in each other's visions, which then kind of continues to aid and support the confidence they have in their beliefs. So it's interesting to think about the idea of who you're surrounded by, what you consume, kind of shaping, confirming, um, casting doubt on perhaps our belief systems.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was something that was really fascinating to think about while I was watching, because I was also wondering like, okay, is this, do they truly believe these things? Are they just here to wreak havoc? Is there something larger at play going on here? Like I was trying to figure it out. And I love the introduction of the message boards because that made me really doubt what was going on. But then to have that little bit of doubt and maybe have one of them, maybe not with pure intentions like the others, but it still be true. I think that that was a cool little messy piece of this that I really enjoyed, that they included. That all four of them weren't necessarily pure of intention. One of them might have been there, maybe maliciously, but that didn't make it any less true. It's just a weird thing to think about too.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, with the Redmond plot line.
Yeah, yeah, and him using a different name and all of that, being the guy at the bar. Because I expected when Andrew went and got his wallet that he wouldn't be the guy that attacked him. That's
Yeah.
what I was ready for. And
Yeah.
so that was a little surprising to me. And I liked
Mm,
that inclusion, that it was a little bit uh, messy from what I expected, but that he was
mhm.
actually right.
Mhm. And it helps us build empathy and investment in a lot of the like anger and the accusations from Andrew and kind of the doubt that he has as well. Like having gone through an experience, like he was like, like this is the person that caused me years of therapy. You know what I mean? And so like I don't blame him for his headspace going to like, you guys are here to continue to dole out the same things that this guy did, and like he's either he's using you or you guys are all aligned in those intentions. Like there's a lot of um empathy that I had for Andrew. He's a challenging character because he's so like passionate. It all comes from a place of like the desire to protect his family and be with his family. But um I think that that moment builds a lot of empathy with Andrew, with us as viewers of the story unfolding.
And I love how that ties into him being such a fighter as well. Like when the four first break into the cabin and Andrew is just wailing on Redmond, and I did not expect that. And so then learning that he also has a gun, something else that I didn't expect. And so then you see over the course of the movie why he ended up, able to beat the hell out of a person carrying a gun. I think that those were important little details that helped create a fuller picture of who this character is and why he's reacting that way. It was really helpful.
Mhm, mhm. Usually the flashbacks are kind of like an eye roll moment, but
Hmm.
they actually really did
Yeah.
help me connect with these two people, and to see how much of a foil uh, Andrew and Eric are of each other, and I loved, as cheesy as it was, I loved that scene where they're they're listing out each other's flaws. um it was oddly endearing because it's just they're able to see each other so clearly. Their flaws or their weaknesses are so contrasting from each other, but also are so complementary to kind of helping shave that like harder parts of them and really soften each other in the different directions that they need to. You know what I mean? And I loved their dynamic. I loved that. And those flashbacks really helped ground us in being invested in these two people and into this family.
Uh-huh. And I'm usually the first one to like just crap
Yes.
on
Rail
flashbacks
on
because
some
most of
flashbacks.
the
Yeah.
times they are trash. But they worked in this one. And I feel like there weren't too many of them. They weren't too long. Like the film is not relying on flashbacks to like tell the story, or even like the film is not relying too heavily on them, but it's merely this like supplemental information of let me give you more context. And I really appreciate how they were used and how short they were. And that they're not this huge crutch for the movie, but really elegantly woven in.
Yeah, it really did work well. I was rolling my eyes a little bit the first time we did a flashback, but over time, I think it worked. I think it also helps add the emotional stakes of this family being tied up or eventually being forced to make this difficult decision. Like it really helps us feel the weight of that, feel the weight of the years of connection that these two people have had, the love that they had, pouring into and bringing this daughter into their family. Like, and so it kind of makes the ending feel weightier, getting to know this family a little bit more too.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, we've seen their history together, which makes it all the more tragic that this had to happen to them, which is why you shouldn't go on remote cabin vacations.
Say no. Yes. One of the other things that subverted my expectations was the lack of gore. They show
Yeah.
so little of it. It's all off screen. Thoughts on that? Did that work for you?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I was ready for this to be like a gory bloodbath. I was ready. Like Quentin Tarantino level gore. I was buckled in. And so the first time when we didn't see that, I was quite shocked. But I love that we don't see all of that, and the way that the movie is so intentional to let us still experience the horror without seeing it, I thought was really fun.
It's very different from what I expected as well. It made me think about how many people are showing up to the theater with a title like Knock at the Cabin, a premise like we have for this movie. And I think a lot of people are going to leave really disappointed because this is not the like thrilling horror experience that you would expect it to be. Um, it's it's oddly such a more warm and gentle movie, all things considered.
Yeah, it really is.
Um, like incredibly soft-hearted and emotional and meaningful than just like a horror thrill ride. And that's not what if you're going to a movie like Knock at the Cabin without really maybe knowing much about it other than the premise and the title. This is not the movie that you signed up for and paid money for. So I wonder how much that is contributing to some of the negative reviews. It definitely contributed to my experience of this. I was like, like this is not the thrill. Like I need to readjust what I'm expecting from this movie. About like 20 minutes in, I'm like, they aren't showing any of these moments where you would want to see the blood splatter. Um, that was surprising to me.
Yeah, it's this interesting problem that we talk about often is like how do you market a movie? Because obviously you need to market it to get people to come, but not but like also setting expectations appropriately, like I I don't know how I would classify this movie. I don't know what genre I would put it in because it's not really horror-y to me. I don't think it's you could maybe put it in like thriller, maybe? Um, but it's not action. I don't even think it's not sci-fi. Like I don't know where to put this. And so then that kind of makes it difficult to market it. I don't know. It's hard when all of these genres have certain expectations to them. And so when you have a movie like this that doesn't maybe cleanly fit, how do you get people to come see the movie without distorting expectations that would then maybe lead to more negative reviews and then it just spirals downward from there? It's a weird
Mhm.
problem.
Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, it's categorized as a horror mystery according to Google. I don't know what it is on IMDb, but Google
IMDb
categorized,
is horror mystery thriller.
which it's not even a thriller because it's not really
I
that suspenseful
No,
either.
it's not. But
Wikipedia calls it an apocalyptic psychological horror film, which it isn't. It's a family
yeah,
drama
it is a family drama.
with
I don't
some
like yeah, with
apocalyptic undertones. You know, well, I feel like we're describing a wine. You know, it's
That's exactly what it is.
family drama forward with some notes of
With some notes
thrill
of thrill and apocalypse,
and some aromas of, yes, some aromas of
of horror.
horror. Yes.
But honestly, like, I wonder, I know that's very silly, but I wonder how that might help if
Yeah.
we classified movies not in these, like, sweeping categories. We have talked about this so many times, but I'm back on this soapbox again, I'm so
Love
sorry.
it. No, I
But
love it.
if we were able to get a little bit more creative in how we classify movies, maybe that would help people better connect the movie that they're trying to see with more appropriate expectations.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know. And there's so many movies out there today, like, to stop and, like, go to a theater or put this movie on instead of the million other movies out there. Like, I feel like we need to change some of these models that we used to rely on when it comes to genre,
Mm.
because
Mhm.
we just have too many options, and I don't know, we need better classification so we can make better decisions about our entertainment.
Yes. Yes. It's interesting because it's partially definitely a expectation problem, but I'm also thinking about, like, there are movies that I've seen that have totally subverted what I thought the movie was gonna do. But the subversion works, you know, like, okay, I thought we were going down this path. We are not. We've pivoted, but I'm on board for the other path. This one I honestly was kind of still waiting, even like, two-thirds of the way through, that perhaps we're still going to get the psychological horror. Like I was like, maybe there's an explosive ending. Who knows? But so we never kind of take the left turn soon enough for me to have been on board with the path that we're on. Now that I look back, I'm like, wow, okay, this is a very different journey that we went on. But while we're along the way, I'm like, I think we're on this path. In fact, I get to the ending and realize that we're not. So there's movies that subvert the genre expectations in general, and then there's the ones that do that subversions, I think, later down the line in the movie, and I think those even have a harder job to figure out how to land that well, because for so long we think we're going down the path that we expected, and um it's almost like the mousetrap roller coaster ride where you think you're gonna go run off the edge, but then you quickly make a turn, and that whiplash, that like thrust of being thrown in another direction, I think can either work very well, like like knock it out of the park, or it feels a little bit unsatisfying, or you feel like you've been set up for something that you didn't receive.
Yeah, and I think that also depends on you being really invested in the movie. Like,
Hmm.
you have to be buckled in and, like, securely fastened in order
Hmm.
to go on that and have a good time. If you are skeptical or not fully engaged, then you're probably going to be less likely to go along with those things. So that goes back to, all of the movie fundamentals. um
Yep.
I
Yep.
also
And the
wonder,
cues. Hmm.
yeah, I also wonder for this, like, for filmmakers that are known for specific things, when they do something
That's
different,
yes.
like, how that impacts us, because both of us were expecting something different from this just because of the name M. Night Shyamalan. We needed
Yes.
no other information.
No.
Just the
Yep.
name, we know that there's going to be a twist.
I think that's a fabulous point. Yeah. That's another added challenge. You've got the genre hurdle, and
Yeah.
you've got the like you as a director and your brand.
Yes.
Jordan Peele, same
Yeah.
problem that he had with Nope. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So many people are upset. This is not the horror movie that we got with Get Out and Us. What is this? This is sci-fi. This is not really that, horror-esque. What happened, And the Jordan Peele-ness of it all sets you up to believe that you're on a ride for something. So we go in with biases.
Hmm. Yeah, which are just, I think, interesting to think about.
Yep.
thinking about, okay, what do I expect because this director's name is attached to it? And
Mhm.
how does that influence my experience of the movie?
Mhm. Yep. Yep. I had a conversation with someone the other day who was mentioning how I don't remember how we got on this topic, but he was saying that like there's a point when they're watching a movie where they give themselves over to it. They're like, okay, I might not know where this is going, but I'm willing to just go along with whatever you're going to unfold. Like I'm strapped in. I'm no longer like thinking with that analytical third brain about this. Like I'm along for the ride. And there's like a moment into the movie where that happens for them versus there are other movies where they're still constantly like picking apart trying to figure out what this movie's looking to do or where we think this is going. Like there's such an um, awareness that is not turned off yet, and it was fascinating to try and unpack like why is it that some movies can get you to the point where you're like, let's go, and other ones you're still kind of got your brain turned on and trying to map out where is this going, how are these characters being developed, like that's still actively um, running in the back of your mind. um, and it's fascinating to think about like why certain movies can get us there and others perhaps don't, and also our mental states and our personal lives and the formats that we watch them in, whether we're in a theater or at home or distracted and can pause, how that all also contributes to those mental states of being fully strapped in for the journey versus your brain's still going.
Yeah, that is really interesting to think about because we've talked about that before. How
Hmm.
some movies, it's like, oh yeah, no, I was in it, and then other movies just not engaged at all.
Yeah.
It's very
Like I want
interesting
to
to
know what
think
those,
about.
yeah, the patterns are or
Yeah.
the common, traits are about the ones that work and the ones that don't, and why and why not. Be fascinating.
Hmm. Okay, we need to start like a spreadsheet or a list or something. Uh, okay, it was this movie at this point in time, and this was the
Yes.
circumstance, and you just start collecting data.
Mhm. Mhm. We do. And I feel like that's the challenge of every filmmaker creator
Hmm.
is to have the viewers get lost in their world, and just give themselves over to you fully, just in the hands of the filmmaker and the creators, and like lead us, take us to wherever you want to go, and we will follow, and we trust that it's going to be a fabulous ride one way or another. And yeah, there are movies definitely that we quickly get to that point, others that take some time, but we do get to that point, and then others that you never get to. It's um we'll have to talk about that a little bit more. That would be a fun conversation.
Yeah, I'm also trying to remember the last time that happened.
Yeah. I'm intrigued to hear what comes to your mind
I
first.
I I I think that happened with Bardo because it was so
Mm.
weird that I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh hell yeah, let's do this. I don't care where you go because it's weird."
Actually, I was thinking about Bardo because that really worked for you. You gave
It
yourself over
sure
to it,
did.
and I could not give myself over to it. I was like, "What is going on? I need all of the details. Give me more information." But somehow the more information you're giving me, the more confused I
Mhm.
am.
Yeah,
So, what are we doing here?
yeah. You just have to
Yeah,
go
that
with
was a good one.
it.
Yeah. The one that comes to mind for me is Tar. Got lost in that one. It was
Oh, yeah.
fabulous.
Oh,
It's
such a
fun to
good
get lost
movie.
in that world.
Mhm.
Messed up world,
Yeah.
but I was lost in it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great one.
Mm.
I I don't know. I think I know that there are some, like, visual things. So, like, with, like, Pig is an example. That first shot, I was like, "Oh, yes, I'm here for this." Like, I need no other information. I'm buckled in, ready to go.
Yeah. You're
So
like,
I
take all
think
of me.
yeah,
I'm ready to give
I'm
it all to you.
I'm here for it. Like, yes, we are in the mountains in Oregon. There is a pig. Nicolas Cage being crazy. I need nothing else. So I think sometimes visually I can see how like an opening shot is composed and
Mm,
already be able to like infer some things about how this movie is going to go and understand like, oh, visually we probably think similarly and so I can trust this. I think other times like
interesting.
Bardo, like it was so
So out
surreal.
there. Mhm.
Yeah, it was so bonkers and like so creative. And I think it was the just bonkers expression of creativity that helped me go like,
I'm here
yes.
for it.
And
Mhm.
it's been a while since we watched that, but I think there's also something about like the pacing and the storytelling that really helped me with that. And I think
Mm,
also like because it's in another language, I had to focus more, so I was probably more willing to give
engage.
myself over because I can't be thinking about something else while watching a movie in a different language. That's much harder for me to do at the same time. So I think that also helps contribute to that.
That's a fascinating idea because, sometimes people think about films in other languages. It's distracting. It's whatnot. It's a lot more cognitive load, but perhaps what you're saying is that it actually engages you more fully, and you can get lost in the world more fully than um, your own biases in your own language, or the lack of demand it needs for your brain to be fully immersed into the world that it's creating. That's interesting. That's really
Mhm.
fascinating.
I think so because I
It's
can't
disarming in a lot of
multitask.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah, but if I'm watching a movie in English, it's a lot easier for me to multitask. So
Mm-hmm.
it's harder for me to keep my attention focused unless the movie is really good and demands my attention, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. It is asking for more of you.
Yes.
Therefore, you almost have to give more of you to keep up. And
Yeah.
then by that point, you are sucked into its world.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think it's easier because it
Mm-hmm.
does require more
Mm-hmm.
focus.
Interesting. I love that.
Hmm. Now I'm trying to think through like all of the other
More
movies that
films.
we've watched that aren't in English. Like so like Drive My Car is another example.
Parallel
Loved
Mothers you
Drive My Car.
loved
I
too.
loved Parallel Mothers.
Yep.
Everything or yeah, Everything Everywhere All at Once. But what was the other one? Worst Person in the World.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Hmm. Okay.
New
We're
hypotheses.
yeah. I enjoy coming up with new hypotheses together. This is fun.
Yeah. We have quite a few to explore. That's fun.
Mhm.
I love it. Look at that. Knock at the cabin. Inspiring some really great tangents and conversations and topics. You know what I mean? I love it. I love it.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
So, not along for the ride for Knock at the Cabin. Wanted to get onto a different ride.
For me. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
And
mean,
that's
that's
all
why it's
right.
fun because, yeah, we receive this film so differently,
Yeah.
and then we get to unpack why did it work for you? Why did it not work for me? And tease apart those different dimensions in a really fun way. Yeah. I can see why this film is potentially divisive for a lot of people. Um,
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
yeah. So take some risks, do some things.
Yeah. Just trying some stuff out.
Yes. All right. Any other last thoughts about Knock at the Cabin before we wrap up?
Uh, Shout out to M. Night Shyamalan for showing up in the infomercial for the
Yeah,
air fryer.
I know.
It was great.
A little cameo.
Yeah.
Hello, here I am. Commercial host. I love that on Google the listing for the cast lists him first. As if he's like usually they
That's
list it in terms
amazing.
of like who the like most prominent, most seen characters are. But it's just M. Night Shyamalan, infomercial host, first actor.
Yeah, man. The most important, he is the anchor for
Hmm.
the whole movie is
Yep.
that infomercial.
Yeah. My quick little shout out is the casting for Andrew and Eric, I think, was so spot on for their personalities and kind of the auras
Mhm.
that they give off. The performances obviously are really great to sell that, but I think just visually too, the way that their faces are structured and the way that they look really lend itself to the dynamic between the two of them and kind of the personality traits that they're known for. So I thought that worked really, really well. I kept thinking about that throughout this movie. Like, man, these two were cast in the right roles for the personalities that they're representing. It was really great.
Mhm, and they had such good, like, chemistry between each
Yeah.
other, and they
Yeah.
worked really well together. It's
Hmm.
great.
Yeah. So it was really good. All right. This was our review and discussion of Knock at the Cabin. As we mentioned, you can find it available on Peacock to stream. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us. Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you hung out with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a review letting us know your thoughts about M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin. You can connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at Movies and Us Pod, or you can email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. We will be back next week to discuss the film Fast X. Here we go. Vroom, vroom. All right. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you very soon.